And welcome back to Run the Terra, episode 23. Today, well, you know what? Let me first introduce myself. I'm Grandmaster Dan.
I'm Adam Edelman Munoz.
And I'm Stan Jarzewski.
And today, we have your meta pulse as always. We've got little quick notes, a little 1, 2, 3 on the patch notes. And then we're going to get real deep into Noxus, that gritty warrior region. They like killing. They like a good show of some hurt. We're gonna get into it. But first, let's talk meta. Stan, where were we terribly wrong? What is the meta looking like?
As I told you guys, Basilisk Rider, he real good. And he has taken over the meta, just kind of putting Noxus as just the region to be in right now. Noxus is everywhere. We have a kind of a bunch of versions of Basilisk Rider aggro going around. We have Noxus and things like Elusive Burn. We've got Noxus as a burn aggro deck. Aggro is where we're at right now. And naturally that's shifting, so a lot of the things that were good while aggro was a bit weaker and less prevalent are now kind of fallen by the wayside. So we've got some drops in some of the Tempo Sejuani decks because they're moving a little slower than they would. Heimer Vi drops a little bit because of this. It drops Kinko Elusives pretty severely as well. TFS has a bit of a hard time getting in before all of this aggro stuff happens. Brahmanivia being one of the control decks that can kind of shift into some more life gain if it needed to, and kind of has good chump blockers for that deck, is still doing pretty well. So that's kind of your mid-rangey control deck that's still competing pretty well. But that's really what our tier 1, we're back in just this aggro state.
What is your favorite Basilisk Rider deck, Stan? That's the important question.
I mean, I'm gonna have to go with the more Freljordy variant that just kind of uses Omen Hawks and Fury of the Norths to eke out a little more value. Mostly because, while I think the Harrowing one is stronger, I fucking hate the Harrowing again. It's just really
So you're more of a chilly Basilisk than a dead and dying Basilisk.
Yes, I'm
okay.
Very much big chilly Basilisk.
All right, I feel that. What about you, Adam? Which one's your favorite?
As
Zombie.
you all know, it's Brahmanivia. Shadow Isle's probably in control. But if to answer the question somewhat seriously, I like spells. I like having that bit of extra reach. So I'm actually a fan of the Piltover's on Basilisk Burn.
Cool, love that. Love that little spice brought to it. So I guess we got patch notes now. Not too much happening. I think there's only a couple card changes.
Two. Though there's still a watch list.
We had pilfered goods going from 2 to 3, as we've been calling forever.
But say no longer just the most efficient burst card draw spell in the game.
We also have Solitary Monk going from power 4 to 3, which you'll have to see. Weirdly missing here was the Black Spear 3 to 2.
Right?
I think they might have forgotten that.
They'll get there someday.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they just goofed up and forgot to put that one in. Stan, you might have to go back down to HQ and tell them what's up, give them a little piece of your mind. But I think they also added in labs now.
Yep.
Have you guys played the first lab?
I haven't checked it out yet. I need to do that soon.
I've played a few games of ARAM. It's okay.
Well, for the first, I was hoping you were going to say no, you haven't played anything, because I was going to say for the first time I'm the resident expert here on something besides the latter. I just am hot off the presses from tinkering in Heimer's lab, and whatever. I don't particularly enjoy it. I mean, I absolutely dominated my opponent as suspected. But I was trying to think of ways to kind of meme up the labs, and I couldn't really think of too much because it's so random based. I guess you could just keep quitting until you get, the exact thing you want, but that's not very fun.
I think it's a good diversion. It's a good kind of alternate experience for those looking for it. But I'm still having fun with ladder, right? I mean, you don't need a diversion when the ladder and random meme decks you can make on ladder are still fun.
Yeah, that's true. I actually, one thing that I need to talk to Riot about, this is my little Riot aside for a moment, where I directly address Riot. It's a new segment we're doing. We're going to have to start doing it every week, I think, from what's been happening. But Riot, it seems that I have laddered so hard and gotten so good that you accidentally deranked me down to bronze 1. What I think might have happened was that I played so well that the game got confused and flipped the integer to a negative and then ranked me back down to, the bottom tier. So,
yes,
right, if you could go ahead and fix that for me,
error.
I guess we need to make like a new tier, like Grandmaster or Ubermaster or something. But yeah, if you could figure that out for me, that'd be great. Thanks. This has been the Riot Aside. Yeah, I mean, that's really, I think, all of our kind of due diligence, or our sort of like our little housekeeping stuff. I guess we can just get right into Noxus and talk about it. Let's start out with really the flavor, because I know right here on the list we have general strengths and weaknesses listed first, but I really want to get to know these people as a people. What their culture is about. So what are the Noxians about?
All right,
Draven. They're about Draven.
Well,
Stan's not entirely wrong. No, as the resident lore expert, this is my job. So
exactly.
Noxus is a region of fiercely individualistic peoples. Noxus is a kind of expansionistic empire, but they're very kind of egalitarian and values based on proving your worth. So the good side of Noxus is kind of everyone who tries hard and does well and has natural talent can and will succeed, right? Noxus has incredible upward mobility. If you are good at what you do in Noxus, you will be rewarded for it. The downside is that Noxus is ruthless and kind of warmongering and strikes out into other regions' territories to topple thrones and destroy hierarchies and get more land for their ruthless and individualistic peoples. So, kind of the best and worst parts of America rolled up into one.
I was going to say, this sounds exactly like Rothbard's cream dream right here. Like, this is the definition of a libertarian and capper.
It
right
kind of is,
It's kind of brilliant. And actually, it's opening up a whole new... it's just opened up my mind to a whole new array of ANCAP memes to make in reference to...
Noxians are, as a general rule, Noxians are a warrior culture. Battle is so warriors succeed well in Noxus. Noxian entertainment includes gladiatorial fights. Draven is so fucking good at his job that he is. Draven's theoretical job is being an executioner, but in all practicality, what Draven is a Coliseum entertainer who, they throw people fully armed who have committed crimes into a pit against Draven, and Draven toys with them before he kills them, and shows it up for the crowd. Darius, who is Draven's brother, is one of the three leaders of Noxus. The Noxian leadership is divided into three, each one's seeing over a different kind of political sphere. Darius leads the war effort. He is, the grand general, the soldier, the kind of soldier among soldiers. When you go out to war, Darius wades out in front and tells everyone to follow behind him because he's just that fucking good. Swain is the tactical leader of Noxus. He kind of sits back and chooses what is and isn't wise and how they're going to conquer things. Swain makes the plans and Darius carries them out. And then their third leader is the mysterious Black Rose. It's not entirely clear who this is. All we know is that they do the secret behind closed doors scheming for Noxus.
Katarina.
Katarina's just an assassin. She's good at being an assassin, but she's just an assassin.
It sounds like we've got a new job for our listeners here, and it's to find out who the Black Rose is. I'm gonna need all my listeners to really sleuth this one out.
Are you really telling me that Katarina isn't like a Black Widow clone, and then she's Black Rose? Like, come on, Adam.
No,
Easy.
no, she's not. Katarina is a Russian femme fatale, not, which I guess the Black Widow draws from the same archetype. But
Uh-huh.
Stan, if you had been joining in on the sleuth team that I just set up 15 seconds ago, you would know that the most obvious candidate is always the one that you rule out the first. So Katarina's already on the chopping block, and it's always the one you least expect. That's why, for my assertion, I'm going to say it's actually Timo, because you literally would never
he's not
expect
even
that.
That would be really good.
He's literally not even in that region. That's why it's so diabolical.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy. So if it can't be Katarina, my money's on Crimson Curator.
All right. Speaking of Crimson Curator, a prominent faction within Noxus are Sangromancers, or Blood Mages. Vladimir leads these Blood Mages and is kind of the best of them and the most powerful of them. But they do all sorts of pretty impressive stuff with their blood magic. They can and do reanimate ancient soldiers to wade out into the battlefield and kind of basically show the other side what's what.
So is he not a vampire?
No, he is a mage. He is a blood mage. He's just so in tune with the blood that he can and often does transform parts of his and other people's bodies into blood, just as part of his combat style.
Okay.
He's he's a pretty nasty dude, but no, he's technically not a vampire.
Wow. I've been playing this all wrong.
Despite being, basically a vampire.
Okay.
The other things you need to know about Noxus mostly is that they are at war with everyone.
Makes sense.
Most notably Ionia, which they sacked most of but couldn't take, and Demacia, which they have a kind of persistent long-term war with.
That makes sense. Yeah, so they're at war with Irania and Afghanizon. There we go. Trying to say Noxus US at the end. I'm just saying. It's all starting to add up that this is a secret sort of social commentary of a game. Anyways, moving on. We have general strengths and weaknesses of Noxus. So what are we seeing as the strengths? I mean, I think the first one that jumps out to me is a lot of straight to Nexus damage, a lot of burn.
Oh, yeah. Noxus is the best at doing damage in all of its forms. They have high attack units naturally. They have a fairly high density of overwhelm. They have direct to Nexus damage in a number of forms. If you're trying to just get your opponent dead, you're starting with Noxus.
Absolutely. That's a good tagline for them.
Even their control finishers tend to do direct damage, with Leviathan, Captain Farron, and Swain all having elements of direct damage to them. Additionally, Noxus has the most access to stunning. Again, this is a way of messing with your opponent's units that makes them unable to block, so it kind of plays right back into that direct damage, but still it's worth noting as a strength of theirs. And finally, to play into kind of Vladimir's themes, Noxus tends to have some decent ways of damaging its own units. Now, admittedly, many of those are ways that also damage the opponent, but if you're trying to damage your own units, or if you benefit from damaging your own units, hey, you're back in Noxus. So basically,
that strikes me as
what I'm trying to
interesting.
say,
Just like really quick flavor note. The fact that there's so much stunning in Noxus, the perfect combo to that is obviously Yasuo and Ionia. That's actually pretty interesting that they combined two warring factions together to make a perfect synergistic deck.
Yep.
absolutely.
Really tells you something about society.
So if sometimes you just eat your own words. Sorry about that. One of the one of the reasons Noxus is so strong right now has to do with how this game is balanced. Removal's weak. Killing your opponent's units is cost inefficient comparing to playing units. And
Sure.
if Noxian units damage your opponent, pretty much everything they do is damaging your opponent, then your opponent's attempts to keep up with removing them will often lead them end up with your opponent falling behind. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this means that the region most efficient at just getting your opponent dead will win races against aggro decks, and because of the way the game is balanced, almost always will beat control decks in this kind of slowdown game.
Yeah. So I would like to take this moment to just sort of acknowledge that maybe we weren't so wrong on Basilisk Rider then, because really it's not our fault we didn't see it. We were assuming a more balanced meta game when we should have, I mean, it's still our fault, but also...
I mean, I was about to say, Dan, we've been complaining about how weak removal is for 3 months now.
Yeah.
At some point, we have to
And
acknowledge
somehow
that it's just part of the game.
Yep.
What about weaknesses? It's kind of hard for me to think of them right now, but I guess the main ones are like really strong finishers, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Noxian
Like
finishers are a bit sluggish. I mean, Captain Farron does put out a bunch of damage, but he's an 8-drop, and he's actually not that impressive compared to other 8-drops. Similarly, the Leviathan, slow, kind of clunky, doesn't it can get there in the right circumstances, but it takes some effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
Additionally, Noxus is kind of one note. If you want to try to play a controlling Noxus deck, you can maybe make it work with Yasuo, but you're really playing a Yasuo deck, and if you can maybe make it work secondary to Shadow Isles, but you're playing a Shadow Isles control deck.
I know back in the day there was the toying around with like Swain and Ez and things like that to make kind of the more controlly Noxus decks, but they never really panned out. So maybe that's something to re-explore and fix.
Yeah, I think Swain's usually paired with Braum now, I want to say.
I could see that.
Sort of like
Noxus
a weird
also
burn
has
list.
Almost no healing. I mean, you've got Vlad's Drain, and God, I think there's one other card. Is there?
If there is, I'm not thinking of it right now. I can check.
No, I think it's just Vlad's Drain for healing.
You can keep pontificating while I look this up.
And also its card draw is fairly limited.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, not that Trifarian Assessor is a bad card, but it's the only real card draw of note in the region. I mean, I guess
it's really good.
Arena Bookie is their other way of drawing cards, but it's not necessarily a net even.
But who plays Arena Bookie? No one.
Yeah.
Right.
It also only has 1 health.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only healing card.
And that's actually another notable weakness of Noxus as a whole. You tend not to notice it because modern Noxus decks tend not to build with low health units. But as a region, on average, Noxian units have lower health.
That's true.
And
extremely low, actually.
It's just that the best Noxian units happen to have above curve health or on curve health. I mean, Imperial Demolitionist, Crimson Disciple, that's your Noxian 2-drop suite, and those guys have 3 health, even though the rest of Noxus has mostly 2 or less.
Right. Which upcoming nerfs, maybe look at, well, those cards aren't that bad in and of themselves, I guess. I don't know. But they do have a philosophy, it seems, of nerfing the deck, not the card. So, right? That might be a place where they're going to start looking at nerfing things. I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, as a general rule, I think that I'd like some cards to remain strong. Like, if a card is an extreme outlier, it should be nerfed.
Yeah.
But if the cards themselves are not particularly nasty, and it's just the deck is too strong, I would generally target some of the middling cards in the deck if possible. I think decks should have high and low points.
I agree with that.
Adds to natural variance of the game, and unless those high points are just so strong they determine the game, you should leave them be.
Which is kind of why I'm fine with, like, maybe dropping Demolitionist down a health point.
Right.
Because
I can live with that.
Like, even chaining demolitionists together, I don't think I should be able to chain them together back to back and still have like a 2/2 that dealt 2 damage.
Yeah. Because
Or alternately drop the disciple a health point, make it so that you're less likely to get 2 triggers off of it, and it is less devastating to various AoE effects.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, it makes the transfusions a little bit worse too.
Yeah, or
Like
I mean, more necessary, similar thing. Or, getting back on this other dead horse we keep beating, maybe make transfusion not a burst spell.
Yeah, make a fast spell.
I think transfusion has a pretty reasonable spot being burst. I mean, it's one of Noxus's. Let's see.
I think if you're going to keep it burst, I would almost make it a +1/+1. Like you take 1 damage to make a +1/+1. That seems much more fair to me. Or like a +2/+1 or something.
Maybe.
I think giving it 2 health is a lack for one point of health somewhere else.
I mean, it gives me. Frick, I have completely forgot the name of the card. Shadow Isles ephemeral buff spell.
Mark of the Isles?
Mark of the Isles, which was 1 for 3.
It's giving me Mark of the Isles flashbacks.
It's now 1 for 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about transfusion to me is it tends to come and go with what's good and what needs to be done in Noxus. Since Noxus is like all in on the aggro right now, transfusion's a bit better for pushing through the damage and for keeping, the specific units that it synergizes with really well alive. But I think that with all the things this card needs to do, it's in a pretty good spot. I mean, like, you do need to have 2 units, you need to pay the 2 mana, you need to have either a unit worth sacrificing or a unit that can survive the damage. I'm not saying any of this stuff is particularly hard to accomplish, but, like, it does ask a bit, and, making some, having a burst speed trick is what this still needs to be doing. Like, I think this card is super, super balanced.
I mean, I think the frequency
buffed up.
When we were talking about Mark of the Isles ages ago, we talked about how it always blew out your removal spell, right? It makes it so that the standard counterplay to the deck of answer their key units so that you can survive to the mid game or the late game even. How Mark of the Isles tended to just kind of negate that strategy by making your removal spells just bad. And I feel like Transfusion's doing the same thing, right? It asks a bit more of you, but in exchange it has better synergy with the deck and a lesser downside.
See, what I'd
I agree
say,
with that.
I'd say that in general, though, Transfusion more often than not is putting you in a spot where you can sometimes even be more weak to removal. The thing is, I mostly see this card used or use it going into combat. It kind of ends up being more, oh cool, so now we're going to try and affect how the trades work, and since you've damaged one of your units and the other one's still going to take damage during the fight, if your opponent just waits for the transfusion then responds with their own stuff, they're almost more likely to kill your unit. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as, like, it can be used to blow out removal, but in an aggro deck you're losing a lot more when you do that. And again, you're also making another one of your units more vulnerable to removal. A lot of times this card's definitely putting something in the range of like a Withering Wail or something like that. So whereas before, just pumping something up with a Mark of the Isles was guaranteeing damage got through, this one is potentially letting your opponent mitigate the damage from somewhere else.
But only if your opponent's got enough mana sitting around for double removal spells.
Sure. I mean, but again, I don't think this is too much of a blowout like that. I mean, it's weird, I think, too, because a lot of the old burst speed buff spells that we used to see out of, like, Demacia and stuff like that, the only one we really see nowadays is, like, Fury of the North, back-to-back's kinda dead. Occasionally you still get the 1 mana pump for 1/1, and then Freljord's Burst
Elixir
of
of
Iron?
Iron.
Yeah, Elixir of Iron. For kind of the blowout removal burst spells.
But the reason we don't see those is because all of their decks have been nerfed around them, not because they're bad cards.
Right, which is I think what more needs to happen with Transfusion than anything else. Is I don't think Transfusion is a card that necessarily needs to get nerfed. It's just Noxus in general needs maybe less to do with it if Noxus is a problem.
Well,
maybe
that's
I'd like to see what
Yeah.
the nerfs planned are, because
Sure.
I think that what's likely to happen is they're going to find the single strongest card in the deck, completely gut it, and say now the deck has no high points. Go play another deck.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
It's what they did with Shadow Isles. It's what they did with Demacia. It's what they've done every time they nerf a card. They nerf a card is they say take the high points out of the deck, leave the kind of medium outcome, and then everyone's playing the same medium board game.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a great topic for our next week's segment, which will be another debate, because we should definitely debate or at least discuss the nerfing strategy of Riot. I think it's a pretty interesting concept. But moving on to cards, and we've actually just been it's kind of a perfect segue because we were talking about one of the cards. Let's talk about some of the best and the worst in Noxus. For me, I would say, for me, when I think of the champs, I think probably my favorite, my number one is Draven. Absolutely, Mr. All-Star himself, Mr. Worldwide, Draven. What about you guys? What do you think?
Well, I was gonna say Draven until you
Ripped it.
just ripped it right out.
It's fine. It's just Draven. You don't need to pretend you have a different opinion. It's Draven.
Another one I think of that comes off the top of my mind is Arena Battlecaster. I think that's a lot of what you want to be doing in Noxus.
Yep.
Crowd Favorite is the perfect sort of like antithesis to Battlecaster, but still works in the exact same deck. Treferian Assessor also gets a shout out for me. It's kind of hard to pick because there are actually a lot of cards in Noxus that I really like.
Yeah.
I think as much as I'd like to say anything else, the clear best card in Noxus is just Crimson Disciple. It's a 2-drop that fights every other 2-drop in the game fairly well and makes opposing AoE bad.
And also has a good like in region synergy.
Now, I'm gonna say something that might sound a little controversial. I think the best Noxus card is Yasuo, because he makes the most fun Noxus deck.
So we also have worst card, but maybe let's rephrase. Maybe we can do worst, but also I want to say maybe let's look at a card that we think is being underutilized here. One that could get a little boost, could get a little makeover, a little DIY makeover. What are we looking for?
All right, I have to be honest. I think the worst card and also the card that is most underappreciated, it hits on both fronts, is Auroch Glinthorn. I feel like that's got a very clear strategy it's doing. There's a plan. It's got something going on. And
I'm just going to quickly get in here for our listeners in case they're not. By the way, this is the Mark of the Beast card. This is a 6-mana 6/6 that says when it attacks, stun all damaged enemies.
Yes, I think that Auroch Glinthorn it's got a clear game plan. You know what you're supposed to do with it. It goes in that Yasuo deck we've been thinking about.
Yeah.
But just the numbers aren't there. It's
right.
At 6 mana, it's like a control finisher, but you have to have extensive setup, and it's only good if your opponent's a board-centric deck, and also you still need something to do with stunning those things. It's just got a bit too much going on, or too many requirements for a 6-mana card.
Can I just? I just want to say something really quick, and this might be another debate we should have next week or another topic. I really think we should start thinking about having Rune Terra games with sideboards, because this is like a perfect sideboard card.
Yes, it really is
a perfect sideboard card, right? You would probably put this in like an aggro or slightly not fully aggro deck against a similarly statted aggro deck, right?
Or Demacian mid-range deck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where this
right?
is just going to lock down your opponent's bigger units than you.
Swing in for the win. It's perfect for that.
Well, we can just be the guys who start hosting the sideboard tournaments.
That's actually like a pretty good idea because like I mean this is a card that screams sideboard, right? Like, and I think that's actually been a big problem with a lot of epics in like that. Like they're doing this push for epics to get more play, but it's like they're not designing bad cards. This is a great card as Adams pointed out. It's just that I'm never going to go into ladder with a card like this because what if I'm playing against a Nivea control where they're playing maybe 12 creatures at most?
Exactly,
I don't know
and a lot of them have 1 health.
I mean, right. Like
essentially, the design of narrow but powerful cards only works if the way in which they're narrow doesn't actually matter, right? I mean,
yes.
You know, circling back to hey, my favorite card in Noxus, Crimson Disciple. That's narrow in that you need a very specific set of circumstances to make it good, but the specific set of circumstances you need is low to the ground creature combat, which you're kind of forced into in this game, or other ways of damaging it, which, hey, you've got Imperial Demolitionist. And the output isn't narrow. It's always good at what it does. You need a certain setup. Whereas Glinthorn has a narrow output. Right, you need a specific opposing board for it to be good, and it's good in those cases, right? It's not a bad card, but it's a card that needs there to be a world where it can actually see play. And without sideboarding, I don't think that can be a real thing.
The card right next to it's the same exact way. Armored Tusk Rider, the 6 mana 6/5 overwhelm that can't be damaged with anything with 4 or less power. Like, come on. Slam that in the sideboard. Jeepers creepers.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a perfect sideboard card. That's what I'm realizing, right? Because like I think last week we were kind of dogging on, not really dogging on it, but like there was a push for them. Weren't they making some game mode to like push epics or force some more epics? And we were like joking.
They were talking. So it was a couple weeks ago. They were talking about making buffs to make the less played epics more played. Ren Shadowblade and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, these cards really, I don't see that. Like, it's just, they'd be very useful. They just, again, I'm never going to go into I'm never going into ladder with an Armored Tusk Rider because, what if I'm only facing against the deck that has the, like, Ledger's Finisher? It's like, this was kind of stupid.
Then you've got this lovely 6-drop that does nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like, it's just a 6-drop. Like, that's, so, I don't know. That's something to think about. But, so we kind of talked, we've kind of already discussed on this, but what is the primary, if this is your primary region, how are you playing it? And then, to me, I think the most obvious thing is just like you're almost always playing aggro, or I guess maybe the way to put it more specifically is you're almost always burning the Nexus as much as you can, regardless of whether it's control type Noxus or aggro type Noxus. You're always trying to just do damage to that Nexus.
If your primary region is Noxus, I think you're aggro. I think that you can talk about Swain decks, but Swain decks are always you have a Swain as a secondary finish to some other region.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Primary is pretty much only aggro. I would almost say that it's aggro or Yasuo, but I don't. Is that a 50-50 split or is that a mostly Noxus?
That's an interesting question, right?
No, Yasuo is even more Ionia than it is Noxus. So yeah, it's still just
I think it's close,
talking about
but
secondary
it's
region
no, it's
pools, 'cause
not.
we're
It's
already
actually not
there.
close.
Yeah,
it's like 75-25
Yep.
in favor of Ionia.
So, as a secondary region, Noxian tools include supporting Yasuo.
In fact, half of Noxus's cards are meant to support Yasuo. Only 12 of them work, though.
Yeah.
You've also got the whole Swain plan, right? Swain is a fairly decent direct damage finisher because he locks down the board well while still just poking the Nexus. And then other regions can also dip Noxus to supplement their aggro plans, right? Generally right now you're running Noxus, you're running other regions to support Noxus, but in the past we've seen other regions as your kind of primary option, dipping a bit of Noxus. Noxus is so good its primary plan is also the secondary plan.
They also have like some some mid-rangey plans that have been tried out and, pop their head up every now and again. Noxus is where 5-drop Tribal comes from.
Oh yeah, Trifarian Assessor. That's the card we were giving so much credit earlier and then completely forgot about.
But, you just kind of slam that card in, supporting another region, probably Freljord, that, allows you to abuse that mechanic as much as possible. Cards like a Trifarian Glory Seeker that kind of find their way as a extra removal spell for either other controlling or mid-range style decks. And then Spiders is, I think, whenever
there's your
somehow...
Noxus secondary aggro.
I love that deck.
Yep.
Primary Shadow Isle, secondary Noxus, still aggro.
Yeah. Oh man, I miss that deck so much. That was what got me to. That was the first deck that got me to the Diamond area.
On your backup account, right? You just basically started this game in Grandmasters on your primary account.
Yeah. Well, Riot dropped me into Plat to start with, and then I had to grind up to Diamond. But they only let me pick one deck, and so I picked Spiders. But I was actually playing the beginner's Spider deck, so that just shows, just a testament again to my skill. But yeah, so decks built around champs, you kind of talked to those already. We had Yasuo being a great build around for Noxus, despite being in a completely different region.
Draven and Darius aggro, Swain control, and then the Vladimir deck.
And Darius kind of drops in and out. He seems to be kind of like that flex card that drops in and out based off how much more the burn or how much more the Noxus aggro list wants an extra like body and finisher, and how much it wants to just try to go as fast as possible.
Yep.
As an aside, Darius, Draven also has the kind of Piltover's on discard deck with Jinx.
That's true. Yeah.
Now that deck's been a bit weak for a while. The discard payoffs aren't really helping to justify the otherwise kind of inconsistency you get from that deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, being able to rummage those away is really nice, but Jinx is not quite there, I think. Yeah. She needs a bit of a retool, or the meta needs to get retooled a little bit for
I actually think Jinx isn't the problem with that list. I think the problem is that just in general, unless you start off turn one with an enormous rummage or other similar discard synergy, you're just... your cards are going to be in general weaker than opposing cards.
Inferior.
Because you can get them for free.
Absolutely.
Right, so you have to get them for free if they're going to be, playable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because those cards just trash if you like draw them off the top. So we talked about it a bit, but I guess our answer for this question of things we'd like to see from this region was just sideboard tournaments, but that's probably true in general. But like, what are some other maybe cards or strategies we'd like to see that aren't fully fleshed out? What are maybe some things to shore up weaknesses or to shore down strengths? What are we seeing?
Yeah, I think that I don't know where the Crimsons are at right now. I mean, I know some of the cards that were supposed to be part of that, like Blood for Blood, just never see play and seem like they're never going to.
Yeah.
So maybe like, if you guys want to get your swap, we'll trade. Blood for Blood will be burst now, and Transfusion will be fast speed.
I'd be fine with that, I think.
Yeah,
I'm reservedly fine for that. Something tells me there's probably some busted thing you can do, but I'm reservedly here for it.
Yeah. So, maybe that can bring the Crimson archetype back around. I mean, I know it still like does some things because Braum being better makes that archetype better too, but, doing some wonky, giving Noxus some more mid-range legs.
I'd like to see some early enablers for the kind of Power 5 Plus archetype that the Trifarian Assessor goes into.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, right now you've got Glory Seeker as your only way of turning that on ahead of curve. Kind of Reckless Trifarian. But I'd like to see something that plays into that archetype without just being either an aggressive card or being so narrow as to be too weak to actually be playable.
How about like a 2-mana 2/2 this is a weird card, but a 2-mana 2/2 that says for any spell or ability that checks 5 power, this card counts.
That seems a bit clunky. I was thinking something more along the lines of a 2-mana 5/5 can't attack or block.
Yeah, I was
even a
thinking
1-mana
of
5/5
Oh,
can't
okay.
attack or
2-mana
block.
5/0.
Some Silent Watchers, okay.
I
A
do. Yeah, I do actually like that concept of like can't block or attack until X turn or like until something else happens, right?
Oh, ooh, yeah, that's better. 2-mana 5/5 can't attack or block alone.
Oh, yeah, that's actually really good.
Or
Oh,
like,
that's
unless you have
so
another 5-power
strong.
unit.
That's so strong.
So,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah, that's actually
sorry,
pretty
not
strong, you're right.
alone. Can't attack
Yeah.
or block unless you have another 5-power unit. My brain mentally had already inserted the 5-power in there.
I feel like that's still too strong, right? Because you could go turn 2, I don't have the sword, and then turn 3, I play another one. I'm attacking for 10 on turn 3.
Yeah.
Then another unit with another 5-power unit without the same name, but then we're back into clunky territory.
Yeah.
But you get the
No.
idea, right? Something to enable or facilitate that archetype early on without just being another overset aggro
All
card.
right. What about this? You can't. It's something like you can't attack or block until you have like, and it's kind of like mana gems. So this also helps out the ramp strategy. Like it lets you want to like do like an aggro ramp thing, where you ramp to a certain like point, and now you can start dishing out attacks earlier with your big 5/5 that played on turn 2. That seems reasonable. Like
I'd also like to see reasons
it
to
forces you
cross
to play
over
shitty
other
cards.
regions.
Well, not shitty cards, but yeah.
Right now we have the kind of multi-region Noxus decks are Noxus Ionia for Yasuo, Noxus Shadow Owls for Spiders, and then Noxus Blank for more damage.
Well, also the other deck that's because
I guess Noxus Failure for Vlad.
the reason I'm saying this is that there's the Noxus. Well, this is kind of a while ago, but there's that Noxus Freljord deck that had Trifarian Assessor with the Ash in it, because that like was well supported with like Omen Hawks and all that stuff. So you had a bunch of like 5/5s, and it would also, if you Omen Hawk the Assessor, it would draw off itself, I think.
Yep.
So this kind of like lets it so that you don't have to make just an Ash deck with your Trifarian Assessor. Like you can use those ramp cards, and I mean this would actually kind of work well too with that common plunder card in Freljord that says like when you plunder you gain a gem.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the 4/3.
Yeah.
The card that makes no sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, like the ramp cards in this deck are like not. I don't know. They're just weird. Like I don't ever want to ramp in this game. It feels like for a control deck. So maybe if you like make it work for an aggro deck, which is like a kind of aggro deck, which is kind of, I guess is more like a combo aggro deck, that'd be kind of cool, I think. And it also lets you not just have to play Ash if you want to go into Freljord with Trifarian Assessor.
So another thing I noticed about Noxus is that it's got a lot of cheap spells, right?
That's true.
Noxian spells below 3 or 3 or less that are playable. Whirling Death, kind of Noxian Guillotine, Noxian Fervor, Might, Culling Strike, Death's Hand, Transfusion, Brothers Bond is close to playable, Ravenous Flock, Guile. There are a ton of like playable cheap spells in Noxus. I'd kind of like to see some sort of synergy that could utilize that. I mean, maybe not directly, but something that just rewarded you for putting a bunch of cheap spells in Noxus.
Well, that was very much the idea behind those old like Draven Ezreal decks. So like maybe playing back into that archetype where the cheap spells tripped off a Draven as well, like a little more targeting, and that deck's really good because if your Ez flips more quickly in that deck, you've generated so many cheap spells to just like fire off.
It would be cool to have an Ez that just cared about targeting in general and just like buffed up the number of things to target. Or there's like a different hero that was like the number of buff spells you do on your own creatures or something, and then has a similar Ez effect.
The anti-Ez, I like it.
Lazarus or whatever his name is backwards. Let me do that really quick. Ezreal. Or Pez Fake. I don't know why.
There we go. Let's
Zafake.
Cool. Yeah.
Layers. I don't know. Just kind of saying words.
Those Adam, don't confirm or deny. Those are all League of Legends champions, so we're definitely getting one of them.
Yep, we're getting
I will
Laser.
not confirm or
Laser.
deny them.
Laser. It's just laser backwards, guys.
Oh, nice. Can we get
Ezreal's
Blazer too?
backwards. Yeah, laser and phaser.
Nice. Gonna get all kind of Azers up in here.
Are there anything? Is there anything else we'd like to see from this region? I mean, I think we've got some good things, like some sort of spell synergy, maybe with buffing your stuff or something. And we have.
I guess what I'd like to see is anything except for more direct damage.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Seems fair.
Yeah, so I guess it's time for my meme corner. And again, I have come as well prepared as last week, which is to say not at all. So we're kind of just going to sit here and kind of think about what we've done with ourselves today. I'm asking all listeners at home to just sit and think about what you've done with yourself today.
Yep, just sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
You spent what I'm guessing is right now about 46 minutes listening to this podcast about a card game.
Yep.
With three bozos who completely whiffed on the Basilisk Rider Rising.
Oh yeah, totally failed on that.
And just think about what you're doing with yourself. I'm gonna shame our listeners. This is not the meme corner anymore. This is a shame corner. Are we turning into a Findom podcast where we ask our listeners to their little piggies?
We're only doing that for this episode because it's Noxus, and I feel like that fits in with some Noxian themes pretty well. We're gonna be your Vlad daddy today.
Stan, that's a great
Noxus
point.
Doesn't kink shame.
We are
Demacia,
just
on the
role
other
playing
hand,
right now.
Has only shame as its kink.
Yeah. We are. This is now the role play corner. I am role playing as, I guess, Vladimir. I guess, or Swain. I guess I'm Vlad. I'm like, yeah, I'm Vlad, right? I'm like hurting my followers in an attempt to gain power for myself. Yeah. So I'm gonna be role playing as Vlad. Who are you gonna be, Stan?
I'll role play as man. What are these?
You could be anybody.
God, anybody.
You could be the battering ram.
I'm gonna role play as Shiraza the Blade, and I want one of you to just pick me up and throw me at somebody. Just yeet me across the stage.
All right. Who are you gonna play as, Adam?
I'm going to roleplay for really the rest of my life as someone who does not remember this conversation.
That's not a Noxian card, Adam.
Yeah, that's not a card in the current game of Terra as of talking, patch 1.5.
Yeah, we can add that. I mean, that sounds dope. That's something I'd like to see out of Noxus.
Okay, wait. We got a new game. We're trying to think. Adam is playing with us. He's doing a sort of figure out which card I am. So which card would be a little spoil sport and not play along in Noxus, Stan? Which card would that be?
I kind of feel like it might be Crimson Curator. Because it's always Crimson Curator at the end of the day. Man, I don't want to do this, see? Nah, no.
I'm not going to play along.
Oh, no, actually, it's definitely Crimson Awakener. That's definitely the dude sitting in the corner just being like, man, I don't even want to be here. I got some blood,
Crimson Awakener? That's not a card that exists in this game. Crimson Awakener? What are you talking about? That card doesn't exist.
The 4
Oh, wait, it does. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, I'm an idiot. You're right. Yeah, actually, that is him. Yep. Adam's being a total Crimson Awakener. Adam, you're being a total Crimson Awakener right now.
Yeah.
That was very fun, Adam. Thanks for playing with us in that game.
Just before you guys leave this, you should absolutely read Crimson Awakener's flavor text.
All right, Crimson Awakener. Even if I said no, you drag me along. So we did it.
We did it. We figured it out.
All right,
guys, you figured out my trick.
All right, I'm gonna play now. That's not a good one. This is a perfect one. Leroy Jenkins. You gotta figure out who that is. Yeah, I'm doing memes to cards now.
Is that Legion Grenadier?
Yeah, you got it, dude. First try. I love that, dude.
Yeah.
Nice, man. All right, this has now become a play along at home. All the listeners, one of us is gonna pretend to be a card, and then you're gonna pull up the card list and figure out which one it is. So Stan, it's your turn now.
Oh boy. Fuck, I gotta find a dude. Oh, I'm too old for this shit.
All right, everybody at home, pause your playing device, your podcast playing device, if you don't want to hear the answer, because I'm going to give it away right now because I already know exactly what it is. All right, I have no clue. Give me a second. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna have to guess Legion veteran.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah! Woo! So good. All right. I think that's going to probably do it for us, guys. Next week, we're going to be in a heated Ben Shapiro-esque debate about Riot's nerfs and nerf strategy and whether we should start instigating sideboard tournaments.
Either that or Riot is going to release some random news that we have to cover for the entire podcast and ruin all our plans.
Either that or you'll never hear from us again. anyways, for Run the Terra, I've been Grandmaster Dan.
I've been Adam Edelman Munoz.
And I'm Legion veteran. What?
Nice. And we'll still be this people next time, and we'll see you then.